Hey, it's Dr. Schmidt. So we're going to watch this TEDx talk by Dr. Greger, and there are almost 6,000 thumbs up on this one video, and it's got 166,000 views. This is from October 25th, 2019. So the point here is a lot of people have seen this video, and they've all been brainwashed. I'm going to debunk every single sentence that Dr. Greger says, and I'm going to show you in the comments. It says, note from TED. Please do not look to this talk for medical advice. The speaker makes strong assertions about a specific diet that lacks sufficient scientific evidence for general prescription. So right here is the TEDx content guidelines. It says TEDx showcase ideas worth spreading. There are 4 guidelines here for any TEDx talk. Number 1, no selling from the stage, no political agendas, no religious proselytizing, including New Age beliefs, and then only good science. What does it mean when it says only good science? Science is a big part of the TED universe, and it's important that TEDx organizers sustain a reputation as a credible forum for sharing ideas that matter. It's not always easy to distinguish between real science and pseudoscience, and purveyors of false wisdom typically share their theories with as much sincerity and earnestness as legitimate researchers. Indeed, the more willing a speaker is to abandon scientific underpinning, the easier it is for them to make attention-grabbing claims. You'll see attention-grabbing claims here in this TEDx talk. So beware being seduced by wow. We want talks to be interesting, but before that, they must be credible. Here are some things to look for and to avoid. Claims made using scientific language should be testable experimentally. Their first point here is the most important point when it comes to veganism and what Dr. Greger says. He's always looking at epidemiological studies or observational studies. There's no experiment in those types of studies. When he does look at experiments or trials, the vegan studies are always comparing veganism versus conventional treatment. They compare veganism with the standard American diet. So this is what vegans use for their science. And I'll show you the research between ketosis versus veganism, which the vegans are always avoiding. Okay, claims made using scientific language should have been published in a peer-reviewed journal. Beware, there are some dodgy journals out there that seem credible but aren't. That's a true statement. And also, too, people will say, well, these studies are peer-reviewed. That doesn't mean anything either. So you can have a group of peers that are just as ignorant or have a political agenda as the scientific researcher, and so they will pass any sort of research done that meets their agenda. Now, having said that, I'm not anti-scientific, and I've read people will say this online, like, yeah, peer-reviewed doesn't mean anything, and then a comment below that, like on Twitter, would say, well, you're anti-science. That's not true. Not anti-science. It's we're trying to make science better. So the science should be based on theories that are also considered credible by experts in the field, be backed up by experiments. Again, there's that word, experiments, that have generated enough data to convince other experts of its legitimacy, meaning the experiments are done over and over and over again by other groups of people and replicated and gotten the same results. The science must have proponents who are secure enough to acknowledge areas of doubt and need for further investigation and not fill in the face of the broad existing body of scientific knowledge. Okay, that statement right there is sort of questionable because the broad existing body of scientific knowledge, when you talk to vegans and registered dietitians and nutritionists, they'll say that it's already settled, the science is settled, that low-fat diet is best. Well, that's not scientific. Science means you do the scientific method, which means you do an experiment. When you do an experiment, low-fat is horrible. So, and I'll get into that. I'll show you the data on that. So the science must be presented by a speaker who works for a university and or has a PhD or other bona fide high-level scientific qualification. And that means nothing at all because you can have PhDs and MDs and they say the completely opposite of the truth. And then show clear respect for the scientific method and scientific thinking generally. True statement, again, this is the key. That term scientific method means that, number 1, you make an observation. This is the scientific method. Number 2, you form hypothesis. That's where observational studies stop. Number 3, now you do the experiment. Number 4, you produce your results. You tell other people what your results are. You get them published. Number 5, other people replicate your scientific experiment and they get the same results. Now you have truth. That's a scientific method. And what Dr. Greger here says, most of it is not scientific at all. The last part of this document from TED says, quote, one of my speakers broke the rules. Now what? So when somebody's putting on a TEDx event and the speaker is saying things that go against the scientific method, then it says, contact TEDx, and it says, let us know about it. We'll review the content together and make a decision about how to proceed. We may place an overlay on the video in YouTube alerting viewers that the content is outside TED standards. So that's exactly what they did right here under Dr. Greger's talk. It says, note from TED, please do not look to this talk for medical advice. The speaker makes strong assertions about a specific diet that lacks sufficient scientific evidence for general prescription. So there you go. Let's get into this talk right here. And I'm going to stop it and I'll show you some other slides. And this will be a lot of fun. Now, when I debunk vegans like this, you got to go almost sentence by sentence because everything they say is a lie. And when I first got attacked by vegans in 2017 for about a year, I'm looking at these videos looking for the one thing to like counter argue. And there's no one thing. It's all of it. So I'll be hitting the space bar and I got to go sentence by sentence or even like phrase by phrase. And I will be skipping forward through some of the content just to speed it up. But let's see how it goes. Here's Dr. Greger talking at TEDx Bismarck.
Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues demonstrated decades ago that our leading cause of death could be reversed with diet and lifestyle changes.
So everybody knows that Dr. Dean Ornish had multiple factors in his clinical trial. They had a low-fat diet. They had weekly counseling with their spouse for a year. They did exercise. They were like off the cigarettes. So you can't say the low-fat diet is good. But for some reason, Dr. Greger never learns this. And Dean Ornish's results get repeated over and over and over again. And it was done a couple decades ago, many decades ago. Yet there's new research that has less variables and clinical trials that are better done with better markers tested and better results doing the ketogenic diet. So we'll get into that, but okay. But the point here is that Dr. Greger is like rehashing the same stuff that's been debunked for years and years and years, and here he is on TEDx, and it's a shame that TEDx has to go through this. And I used to really like the TEDx talks. I've watched plenty of TED.com, and here we are. We're scraping at the bottom of the barrel. So here he's talking about the Pritikin diet. Dr. Pritikin had 2 cancers. When he died, he actually committed suicide. He agreed to go through chemotherapy. He had horrible pain, and he committed suicide. Ann Louise Gittleman worked for Dr. Pritikin in his clinic. She saw his vegan, low-fat diet was very damaging to the patients. The success wasn't there. She left his clinic and started her own ketogenic, low-carb style clinic and got much better results. So here Dr. Greger is bringing up Dr. Pritikin again. And Pritikin treated Dr. Greger's grandmother. And what he's saying is that his grandmother had a bad diet, and at the age of 61, I believe it was, she got onto the low-fat, plant-based diet, and she lived to be 96 years old.
My grandmother was cured of her end-stage heart disease by Nathan Pritikin, one of Dean's predecessors, using similar methods. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65, but thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet.
So what that means is at the age of 65, she decided to stop eating sugar. She got heart disease at the age of 65 because of her sugar diet. He's not saying that. But when people eat low-carb meat, low-carb food and meat, they don't get heart disease. That's what the studies show. So I'm glad that his grandmother decided to stop eating sugar. And that's what made her live longer to be age 96.
Till age 96 to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. So if effectively the cure to our number one killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well,
so here he's saying, like, okay, he's getting into the low-fat, plant-based diet, saying that there's got to be a diet somewhere that doesn't have any backing, any corporate backing, and we're missing it. It's lost. Where could it have gone? What is it? So he's going to lead into the whole food plant-based diet. How can you say that that diet is not backed by corporate money? It's backed by all the food manufacturers that are creating low-fat foods since 1980, when the USDA food pyramid started to promote that. It's backed by the government. It's backed by all the public health universities. It's backed by the dietitians, the nutritionists, all the medical doctors. It's backed. The whole food culture is backed by what he's promoting. And here he is saying that it's being ignored and nobody's doing it, nobody's talking about it, nobody's making any money off of it. Well, he's completely lost on this. If anything is not backed by big food, it's the ketogenic diet, it's the carnivore diet, it's the low-carb diet. And yeah, there are new products coming out from food manufacturers, etc. But what he's saying here is total fallacy.
I made it my life's mission to find out. That's why I became a doctor in the first place.
And yeah, he's a medical doctor. He has never treated a patient. Doctors treat patients. Real doctors treat patients.
And why I started a nonprofit site called nutritionfacts.org.
So just because it's nonprofit doesn't mean that it's virtuous. It doesn't mean that it's backed by truth. He still has funders. And he has investors, or not investors, but donators. The people that fund and donate to his site have an agenda. They have their low-fat, no-animal, eat your insects agenda and reduce the population agenda. And their soy-backed agenda.
Everything on the website's free. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother.
So the site is actually a tribute to his grandmother also. That's not a cool proposition either, because now he has emotion invested into it. So emotion occludes analysis. It blocks analysis. You want to get rid of the emotion, look at data, and then figure out the data and be truthful with it. So he has to, if he's wrong, that means his grandmother was wrong. That's the worst position you can be in.
New videos and articles nearly every day, and the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept.
And evidence-based. Sir, there's plenty of evidence. But what's science? So a poll or a survey is evidence, but that's not science. He needs to say clinical trial, scientific method backed evidence. It's got to be scientific method evidence, not just evidence.
Okay, so what does the science show is the best way to lose weight? If you want testimonials and before and after pictures, you have come to the wrong place.
Right, because the testimonials are not on his website, because 85% of the people who start a vegan diet drop out within 3 months. It's a hard diet to stick to. Yeah, people do get results from it. I've seen people get better from it, but it's not sustainable long term. People get protein deficiencies, and you got to take a bunch of supplements. It's not a natural diet. There are people who have been on the vegan diet for 20 years or longer, but it's not the kind of diet that's good for everybody. And here's the reason why. Because when you look at low-carb diets versus low-fat diets, low-carb always wins. Low-carb wins 32-0 when you look at the results of the analysis from the Public Health Collaboration of the UK. And low-carb beats low-fat 77-0 when you look at the USDA 2015 Nutrition Guidelines report. So those are all clinical trials, randomized controlled trials. And so what Dr. Greger is going to go through here is not that.
I'm not interested in anecdotes. I'm interested in evidence.
So he's not interested in anecdotes. That is the beginning. That's the foundation of all science, because one person has some kind of result and they say, hey, look, this is what happened over here. I changed my diet and then I got better. So from there, other people get more and more information and data, and they create momentum, and then they do, they create the observation and the hypothesis, then you test the hypothesis. So it's totally okay to have anecdotal evidence. It's totally okay to have testimonials and successes because that's where people learn. So instead of doing that, he's removing all that, and he ends up with observational evidence and some really poorly misinterpreted clinical trials, which he's going to get into right away.
Then there's really only one question. What does the best available balance of evidence say right now?
So now he just said balance of evidence. Okay, now he's bringing in the totality of nutrition research. 90% of nutrition research is observational studies. That's not science. There's no scientific method there. It's only step 1 and step 2. Observe, make a hypothesis. The vegans then take that hypothesis and they say it's fact. That's a problem. They skip step number 3. So the balance of evidence, that's a tricky phrase right there. So you got to look out for those kinds of words. And when I say that 90% of nutrition research is observational, it's because when you go on PubMed and you search a topic in nutrition, in the upper left corner, you can click on a button that says randomized controlled trials only or clinical trials only. And when you do that, 90% of the studies go away and only 10% are left.
Okay, well look, I mean, with enough portion control, anyone can lose weight. Or lock someone in a closet, you can force them to lose as much body fat as you want. Chaining someone to a treadmill could have a similar effect. But what's the best weight loss regimen that doesn't involve calorie restriction or exercise or a felony? Well...
So did you catch that? He just said, or a felony. So what way to lose, what can you do to lose weight that would be a felony? He's kind of hinting to the audience, smoking crack, shooting heroin. And the audience laughs. That tells me that audience is filled with vegans. They're already fans of Dr. Greger. They've seen plenty of his videos because that's what he says. He says the ketogenic low-carb diet is like smoking crack or shooting heroin. So they planted a bunch of vegans in this audience, and that's why he got the response that he got with that sort of joke.
I have scoured through the medical literature at all the randomized controlled trials.
Okay, this is a great statement here too. I've seen enough of his videos. I've seen days and days of vegan videos. He has scoured all the randomized controlled trials.
And the single most successful strategy
to lose weight is a plant-based diet. But he is always comparing the plant-based diet to conventional eating, the standard American diet. He completely ignores the plant-based diet versus ketosis in randomized control trials. He always is ignoring that. This is the broad study. So I'm going to get into this, and I'm going to skip ahead several minutes once I get into this. And this is a randomized control trial, and this is 2017. And what they did is they compared the plant-based diet versus the standard care for diabetes. The standard care for diabetes and weight loss is a disaster. Anything is better than taking a statin drug, blood pressure drug, metformin, and eating a low-fat diet, and eating bread and pasta and high fiber. So anything is better than that. Now, basically the whole plant diet is a partial fast, a whole food plant-based diet. It's a partial fast. And with this broad study, they only did 3 months. And what they found is that the people who followed the plant-based diet did better than the people that did standard care. So big deal. So people that did the whole food plant-based diet did better than standard care. And I've been saying this basically for the last 3-4 years on YouTube. The vegan diet's better than the standard American diet. But ketosis always beats veganism. So we can just take this broad study and say, so what? So you eat a bunch of plants, you lose weight, it's a partial fast. You might be better off doing a full fast. 30-day water-only fast. You get probably better results.
We've known for more than 40 years that those who eat predominantly plant-based weigh, on average, about 30 pounds lighter than the general population.
Now this here is an observational study. The rest of his TED Talk is observational studies. And it comes down to this. There are people who adhere to general good advice and people that don't adhere. to general good advice. The adherers don't drink alcohol, they don't smoke, they wear their seatbelts, they eat beans, they avoid red meat, they exercise, they're thin. Other people who are non-adherers, they drink alcohol, they smoke, they don't wear their seatbelt, they eat meat, they don't exercise, they're overweight. So that is what it always comes down to with all these observational studies, is that people that eat red meat tend to not do other healthy things. But that doesn't mean that red meat is bad for you. So we can go over and over and over again with dozens and dozens or hundreds or thousands of studies, observational studies, showing that red meat is bad, but there's too many other variables, and you got to exclude out all the other variables. And when you do, red meat does not cause any harm. It's actually very beneficial. So when Dr. Greger shows these differences in weight for vegetarians, vegans, omnivores, they're not excluding out the sugar. So here's a good point. He talks about the key difference between different diets for weight loss is to be satisfied. Let's talk about this.
The problem is keeping them off. And a key difference between plant-based nutrition and more traditional approaches to weight loss,
which is the standard American diet, low calorie, starving yourself, eating half a meal, and then pushing the plate away,
is people are encouraged to eat ad libitum, meaning you can eat as much as you want. No calorie counting, no portion control, just
eat as many plants as you want.
Eating. The strategy is to improve the quality of the food rather than restricting the quantity.
Right, so improve the plant quality so you're eating real vegetables instead of eating white bread and white pasta and white sugar.
If you put people on a diet packed with fruits, vegetables, whole grains.
This study here is a 5-day study where they're feeding people certain foods, and then we see what the results are regarding satiety.
And beans, allow them to eat as much as they want. They end up eating about 50% fewer calories than they otherwise would.
So when you eat a bunch of vegetables and you're avoiding the sugar and the fat combined, you're going to eat less food. The sugar-fat combination is hyper palatable, and it gives you this very calming sense of safety and satiety, and you want to eat more and more when you put together sugar and fat. So that's why junk food and and 80% of the grocery store is a combination of sugar and fat put together.
Wait, how can you keep people satisfied removing 1,000 calories out of their daily diet? By eating more high bulk, low calorie density foods.
So high bulk means high fiber, which is hard to digest. Low calorie density food or low energy density food means not much fuel in the food. The actual calorie content is low, so low energy density.
Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans, and fewer calorie dense foods, the meats, cheeses, sugars, and fats.
So he's saying like avoid the high energy dense foods. Meat, it's amazing how he's thinking here, how this is ridiculous. He's putting meat, cheese, sugar, and fats all in one category. Sugar does not belong in that category. Sugar is not high energy. Sugar is 4 calories per gram, just like protein is 4 calories per gram. If you want high energy food or high energy density food, you go with the fat. That's 9 calories per gram. So you got to take that sugar out of there, and that's the problem with epidemiology and the vegan agenda over and over and over again, is that sugar goes in the mix with the meat. They put sugar together as junk food along with meat all in one category. This is a crime. So here's another study, and this is 3 days. Food diary. People who are vegetarian versus people that eat a more standard American diet. And what we find here is that the vegetarians had a higher rate of adrenaline going on inside their body. And what they're saying is that the vegetarians had 11% higher resting metabolic rate. And what they're saying at the bottom of this, it says it's a difference in increased sympathetic nervous system activity. So when you're eating a low calorie, low energy, low nutrition diet, your adrenaline goes up, your metabolism speeds up. That's true. You're starving your body and your adrenaline goes up, and that's not good. You want to be calm. If your adrenaline stays high, you can have adrenal burnout. So I used to employ a guy. He worked for me back in 2016, and he had horrible eczema on his skin here. And I just ran into him about 5 days ago at a restaurant. And he worked for me just for a few months. And I was asking him all these questions. How's your health? And he's asking me about my health. And I said, how's your skin? He goes, oh, it's great. He actually looked really good. And he's on a vegan diet now for about 2.5, 3 years. Because once he left being my employee, he went straight on the vegan diet. And some people told me about him. But when I saw him at the restaurant, man, he looked really good. His skin is all cleared up. And he's only sleeping 3 hours a night. That's not good. So just because you look good and your skin's clear doesn't mean you're healthy. Now, so his adrenaline might be like sky high. If he stays on the vegan diet for maybe 5 years, 6 years, how long, he might be totally burned out. So you got to do something about his diet so he can sleep 8 hours. So anyways, the point of this study right here is like, go vegetarian, raise up your adrenaline, and therefore it's good? Yeah, I don't buy into that.
The resting metabolic rate of those eating more plant-based may be 10% higher or more, a boost in metabolism that can translate into burning off hundreds of extra calories a day more without doing a thing. Eating plant-based, you burn more calories just being alive, just existing.
You can do this with the carnivore diet, ketogenic diet, and it's way healthier.
So no wonder why those who eat more plant-based tend to...
Now this is the worst graph ever. He's saying that vegans weigh less, non-vegetarians weigh more. So just because vegans weigh less, does that mean they're healthier? And non-vegetarians, what does that mean? Does that mean they're eating a bunch of sugar? So you're not separating out all the various factors that could play a role in how people weigh. But flexitarian, what the hell? What does that mean? So this is ridiculous. Okay, so let's get into Dr. Greger's best recommendation. And I'm going to tear into this, and you're going to love it.
That kind of best sums up my recommendations for weight loss. It would be wall off your calories.
Wall off your calories.
See, animal cells are encased only in easily digestible membranes, which will...
This is killer right here. Animal cells are in easily digestible membranes. What that tells me is you eat animal foods and you get all the nutrients.
Allow the enzymes in our gut to effortlessly liberate the calories within a steak, for example. On the other hand, plant cells have cell walls that are made out of fiber, which acts as an indigestible physical barrier, so many of the calories remain trapped.
So plant cells are walls that are hard to break down, and you can't get the nutrients. You can't get the calories. You can't get the energy. Plant foods are low energy, low nutrients. They're hard to digest. Now, vegans will argue, well, there's a lot of nutrients in plants. But the point is, can you digest them? And the answer is consistently no. It's very hard to digest plant nutrition. And Dr. Greger is saying here, eat the plants because they're low nutrient, low energy. You fill your body up with bulk. You can't digest it.
Processed plant foods, fruit juice, sugar, refined grains, even whole grains, if they've been powdered into flour, have had their cellular structure destroyed, their cell walls cracked open, and their calories are free for the taking. But if you eat structurally intact plant foods, chew all you want, you're still going to end up with calories completely encapsulated by fiber.
So eat all the plants you want and chew, 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 and you still won't get the nutrients.
Which then blunts the glycemic impact, delivers sustenance to your friendly flora, activates what's called the ileal brake, which dials down your appetite, and frankly dumps trapped calories out the other end.
So you eat the food, you can't digest it, and you poop it out. It's super not healthy. So you eat the plants, you chew as much as you can't digest the nutrients, and you poop it out the other end, and you don't get the nutrients, you don't get the calories, you don't get warmed up, you don't feed your body. That's a good plan. That's his best advice.
Bottom line, try to make sure as many of your calories as possible, your protein, your carbs, your fat, is encased in cell walls. In other words, from whole intact plant foods. That's what nature intended to happen.
How is it that nature intended us to eat foods we can't digest and we can't get the nutrients from?
Millions of years before we learned how to sharpen spears and mill grains, boil sugar cane, our entire physiology is presumed to have evolved in the context of eating what the rest of our great ape cousins eat, plants.
There's plenty of archaeology, paleontology, etc., saying that, yeah, our ancestors had plants, but we didn't evolve from the chimpanzee, the gorillas, the orangutans. We all evolved from one particular primate, and we all had different evolutions. We all have different diets. So the one thing that has separated us from the animals is the use of tools. And so our digestive system, it's relatively short, high acid in the stomach to digest protein, high bile in the gallbladder to digest fat, and a pancreas to digest carbohydrates. We are not designed to eat plants like gorillas. They eat 60 to 80 pounds of plants per day. Cows have 4 stomachs, and horses have a different type of fermentation. And all these different animals, primates, some chimpanzees eat rats and other monkeys. All these different animals have different diets. So just because 2 million years ago there may have been some ancestors eating only plants doesn't mean that 1 million years ago there were some ancestors eating only animals. So his argument here that our primitive ancestors only ate plants is completely debunked. It's been debunked left and right over the years, and he's still saying the same thing, and it's wrong still now as it was years ago.
The Paleolithic period, when we started using tools, only goes back about 2 million years. We and other great apes have been evolving since the Miocene era, more like 20 million years ago. So for the first 90% of our hominoid existence, our bodies evolved on mostly plants.
And it doesn't mean that our DNA can't change. And our body structures change based on the availability of animals for food and the use of tools. And it's the use of tools and these thumbs right here that made our brains evolve greater than chimpanzees and other monkeys. And if the plant-based animals, such as monkeys, they've been eating plants for all these years, how come they haven't evolved into what we are? The plants don't make us evolve. It's the animal foods that made us evolve. That's the argument. None of us were around at the time, and it's all debatable, but the science shows that our bodies are completely fine, and as a matter of fact, need animal foods. And if you don't eat the animal foods, you got to start taking manufactured pills to make up for the deficiencies that you're causing yourself.
It's no wonder then that our bodies may thrive best on the diet we were designed to eat. So maybe we should go back to our roots.
Boy, that's so bad. Now, the next couple minutes, he's going to start bashing the ketogenic diet. Sentence after sentence after sentence is a lie, lie, lie. He's basing his statements on observational studies. And he's going to do this for until he's dead. He's not ever going to change his mind because he's doing this for his grandmother.
All right, I got a few minutes here. What about the ketogenic diet? Body fat loss actually slows down when you switch to a ketogenic diet because...
So body fat loss occurs in the ketogenic diet. That's what he's saying. You lose fat in the ketogenic diet.
Your body starts cannibalizing its own protein.
That's not true at all. And that's been proven to be incorrect. Let me give you an example. If somebody does a 30-day water-only fast and they're in ketosis the whole time, they lose water for the first couple days and they lose protein on the 3rd or 4th day, but then the body converts over and says, hey, wait, we need the protein so we can go hunting. So it starts burning fat. At the end of 30 days, let's say a person loses 30 pounds, 4% of that is protein, 96% of that is fat. So when people get into ketosis, you maintain your muscles, you sustain your lean body mass, so you can go hunting and go chasing down animals. So what he's saying next is completely debunked.
Just looking at the bathroom scale, though, the keto diet would seem like a smashing success, losing less than a pound a week on the regular diet to, boom, 3.5 pounds within 7.
During this study, the 17 obese men that were tested were given 4 weeks of a baseline diet, meaning high carbohydrate, and then 4 weeks of the ketogenic diet, low protein, which is a problem because you don't have to go low protein to get into ketosis. And can you be fat adapted in 4 weeks? You can be in ketosis, but that doesn't mean that your cells are actually using the ketones for fuel. So I'm looking at the study right now, and it says that the urine ketone was slightly higher than the blood amount of ketone. What that means is that these people were not fat adapted. They were not using ketones for their fuel. So it takes more than 4 weeks many times for people to be in fat adaptation. So this is not a true good study to use to teach people about the ketogenic diet.
Inside their bodies told a totally different story. On a ketogenic diet, their rate of body fat loss was cut by more than half. So most of what they were losing was just water, but they were also losing protein.
So the way that they found the loss of protein was they had these people sitting in a metabolic chamber. And in these chambers, they could detect protein utilization by the differences in the body composition. Now, if you're in a ketogenic fasting state, you will lose protein. The body takes away the pathological protein first, such as cancer tumors, fibroids, cysts. Yes, you want those proteins to go away. It'll preserve the lean muscle mass, but you got to make sure you eat enough protein. And most Americans are deficient in protein, and they say that they clamped down on the protein intake in the last 4 weeks of the study. So these patients were deficient in protein going into the last 4 weeks. So yeah, it shows that their protein utilization, and they had a loss of fat-free mass. So meaning that their lean body mass decreased. So yeah, poorly designed study. They fed them a bad diet, and this is a poor diet, poor study to look at.
So losing lean mass. This may help explain why the leg muscles of CrossFit trainees placed on a ketogenic diet may shrink as much as 8% within 2 months. Weight training is supposed to make your muscles bigger, not small.
Not necessarily. You can lose fat out of your muscles and have leaner muscles and yet be stronger and faster.
But look, even if keto diets worked, the goal of weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier casket.
All right, here come the observational studies showing how people who eat meat are gonna die. All right. Oh my God, look at this. A meta-analysis of observational studies. It says right there in the title. They put a bunch of observational studies together with lots and lots of people, and they come up with no fact whatsoever, only hypothesis. You're supposed to take this information and send it up to people with more money and more brain power and more manpower and people to analyze the data.
Whose diets even
and do a clinical trial.
Tend to trend that way, appear to live significantly shorter lives. On the other hand, even drifting in the direction of eating more healthy plant foods is associated with living longer.
Associated with is an important statement. It's not a fact, it's only a link. Remember the adherers versus the non-adherers.
Though starting out more plant-based, but then adding meat to your diet.
How can you add meat 1 time a week or more and decrease your lifespan by 3.6 years? That's totally bunk. Because the people that are living shorter lives are eating more sugar, they're smoking more cigarettes, they're riding more motorcycles, they're doing stupid things, they don't adhere to good advice. And you can't say that meat is bad advice.
At least once a week may not only double or triple your odds of diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and weight gain, but may be associated with a 3.6 year drop in life expectancy. That's going from no meat to just once a week meat
or more.
low-carb diets have been shown to impair artery function.
Okay, now we're going to switch gears to flow-mediated dilatation of arteries.
And
So what this means is when you eat food, your arteries clamp down. I call it digestion. This guy calls it disease.
worsen heart disease.
Just eating food does not worsen heart disease. Flow-mediated dilatation is a bad test for heart disease. There's better tests.
On the other hand, whole food plant-based diets have been shown to actually reverse heart disease. That's what Ornish and Pritikin use.
Ornish and Pritikin is horrible science. Ketosis has been shown to reverse heart disease. And the main cause of heart disease is diabetes. The ketogenic diet is the best diet, better than the vegan diet, for diabetes. So if you want to reverse heart disease, start with diabetes, get your sugar down, get your insulin down, and you do it by avoiding carbohydrates, do the low-carb diet.
So, what appears to be the most effective diet for weight loss just so happens to be the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease.
False statement. This is not the only diet that's been effectively proven to reverse heart disease. He is willfully ignorant of ketosis. He could look at these studies as well as you and I can, but he's got that emotional block, probably for his grandmother and for his funders and his donators. They're like cheerleaders. They want him to keep going. No animals. Animal fat is bad. Animal protein is bad. Save the animals and eat soy. They got that agenda going. So he's not going to learn the truth. He's got to refuse that, or else he loses all his funding. Imagine if he starts saying that meat is okay to eat, and the clinical trials show that it's actually healthy. Imagine him saying that. He's got no income beginning immediately. Dr. Schmidt, I decided to end the talk right there. And if you made it through, good job. There's a lot of debunking going on. And if you want to be a patient, if you need my help, just contact the office. I put the email and the phone number below. I'll also put it right here at the very end of this. So give me a thumbs up, share and subscribe. I appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.